Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Gail Carson, bringing you Living Regret-Free, the show that gives you skills and techniques to achieve a regret-free life. Don't live a life of stress and negativity when you could be experiencing a life of joy, happiness, and reward. Our guests all have valuable tips to make your life a better one. My guest today is Beverly Bergman. She's a 20-year veteran in the marketing industry and one of the top direct response copywriters in her field today. She blends her incomparable understanding of exactly what people need to hear in order to make a buying decision with an amazing talent for creating compelling marketing messages for her clients worldwide. Exploring what was working and not working in her business and her love life led Beverly on a path where she chose to be more open and vulnerable. And to quote her favorite Robert Frost poem, and that has made all the difference. She will leave you with a whole new perspective on why living outside of your comfort zone is essential, and you'll be ready to take more risks and have more opportunities open to you that will pump the life back into your life. Welcome, Beverly.
Thank you so much, Gail. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, let's talk about what you want to talk about, which is vulnerability. And that seems to be a topic that is on many people's minds. And you talk about why being authentic is essential in your life and your business. So why do you believe that being vulnerable is required now more than ever before to connect with people?
I'm delighted to talk about this, and I'm very passionate about it. So I believe it's more important than ever because, as we know, the way we do business has changed significantly over the past 10, 20, definitely 30 years ago, going back that far. And a lot of it has to do with the internet. And the internet is a very interesting phenomenon because it has connected us and given us more opportunities to share and communicate than ever before, but it's not very personal. And as you know, when you go to a restaurant or some kind of a family activity thing, you see the teenagers on their phones on the internet or texting their friends or on Facebook or whatever, and there's no personal connection. And that's exactly what is happening in business as well as in our personal lives.
Well, that's so true. You know, you and I connected again at a seminar we were both at, and I usually email people or call people, and there was somebody there that I thought would be good on the show, and I sent her an email. No, first I called her, and because it was very last minute, and I had to drop out, and she, on her phone, said, thank you for calling, blah, 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 but I don't listen to the telephone, and so I'm asking you to connect with me by text, because that's how I communicate. So I thought, okay. So I texted her and told her that I needed a response right away, and, usually people get texts immediately, and it was at least more than 24 hours before she got back to me. And then she didn't even remember who I was. And she said, I talked to a lot of people, and I don't remember exactly who you are. Can you refresh? Well, so anyway, make a long story short, I did not use her. So people say that they want to connect in these various ways, and some of them do a great job of it, and some of it don't. So you talk about being a free spirit as a child, and you said that was a time when you made the decision that it wasn't safe to be vulnerable. So why did that happen?
Actually, I made the decision when I was about 12. So I had been a free spirit as a child. I had started a neighborhood newspaper when I was 11 years old, and it never occurred to me that anybody would have a problem with that or that there was any reason why I shouldn't do something like that. It was something I was interested in doing, and I went around and interviewed people and typed up the stories and went down to the Jewish Center and mimeographed it at that time. That's how old I am. And they didn't even have copy machines then. And then I sold it for 15 cents, which was more than the newspaper in Akron, Ohio, where I grew up. They weren't even charging 15
But
cents.
isn't that the bliss of being a child, Beverly? That's
I
so.
just thought, yeah, it's like, well, lemonade's 5 or 10 cents. This is worth more than that. So anyway, I did that. I used to go. We lived on the verge of the metropolitan woods, very, very large wooded area, and I would go down there with my friends. And if my friends couldn't go, I was so drawn to go down there, especially like on a daily basis in the summer, that whether my friends could go or not, I would go. And my mom, it was a different time. My mom didn't know where I was. If she didn't get concerned until I didn't come home for a meal. And I would go down there in the woods all by myself exploring. And nothing ever happened. Go ahead.
Hey, you're right, though. It was a different time. It was a wonderful time where kids could play out in the front yard. They could go on little treks. And it was true. Mom didn't worry about you until it was dinner time and you didn't come back.
Right, exactly. So then when I started to mature and was going through adolescence, and you become very aware of how you are in the world and how you're seen in the world compared to other people. And, it was just a kind of a tumultuous time for me, like everybody else. And I thought, I'm not quite as free to be me. I need to kind of like be this way in order to be accepted. And of course, you go through that. Most of us, I assume, go through that for several years in adolescence. And I started to notice that actually it was when I was in college then that I started to notice that sometimes expressing myself the way I express myself naturally wasn't received the way I expected it to be received. And I found that to be more true in my career after that. And so at one point I made a decision after several years in advertising and marketing that maybe it was better to keep my opinions to myself or think more carefully before I spoke. Because I think what it was is I was kind of a round peg in a square hole, and I was a bit ahead of my time. So people weren't ready for my enthusiasm and my ideas.
And you were just going to go for broke is what you were going to do, and you didn't really worry about what was happening in all the other places.
No,
but you also mentioned something about words of wisdom. You said you've had words of wisdom that have shaped your life as you matured. So what are those words of wisdom?
Well, there are several. One of the most important thing I think I was ever told was when my daughter was colicky and my friend told me, "This too shall pass." And that applies to just about everything. Almost any situation you come up against is temporary, and you have to realize that. And another thing that has been instrumental in my life is, and I've seen this happen, it's something I was told, and then I have evidence upon evidence of it being true, which is that our greatest growth happens when we are outside of our comfort zone. That's when we have the opportunity.
That's true. You're right. You're absolutely right about that, Beverly. I mean, if you're not growing, you're not, and you're not maturing and you're not learning, then you do everything the same as you've always done it. So I certainly agree with you there. But you also say that you have two favorite quotes that are posted on your mirror. What are they?
One is a quote from John F. Kennedy in 1962, explaining his decision to invade the Bay of Pigs in Cuba. And he said, "There are risks and costs to action, but they are far less than the long-range risks of comfortable inaction."
That's really great. I like that myself. Yeah. I mean, there are some of us that don't want to take the risks and don't want to do something that's out of the ordinary. But you don't accomplish anything. And then, of course, there are people who do it, and then you say, "Oh, well, I had thought of that, or I could have done that." So that's true. Well, what's the other one?
The other one is from Mark Twain, and it's kind of something you just said and similar to this. If you always do what you've always done, you will always get what you've always gotten.
I have heard that many times, Beverly, and of course it's correct. It's true, and yet I'll tell you, people like being in the safe zone.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got a new awareness, and you made a decision to change how you operated. So what was the result of all of that?
Well, the result of all of that being closed off, and I was a fairly quiet, reserved, introverted person to begin with, was that I just really went into my shell and wasn't expressing myself at all. And after doing that for many years, it became extremely painful. And when I got divorced, and my reason for getting divorced had a lot to do with that. My husband was controlling, and I didn't speak up to him the way I should have. And I paid a price for that. I kind of lost I lost who I was. And when I got divorced, I made a decision that no more, that I am not going to let that happen again. I'm stronger than that. And I started being more like my old self, like my child self.
I was going to say
working.
that child didn't have a problem with any of that,
Right.
but
It
so
got
when
squashed down by society.
well, that's true. That's true. I mean, because if you don't fit into the perfect norm, and that's what I think our listeners are open to finding out about, and that is, you don't have to conform. You think you do because somebody may say something to you, or they may look at you strangely. But if what you're doing is important to you, and you're not harming anybody with it, and it's certainly all right ethically and morally, then there's no reason you shouldn't try something. So. Um, what would you say to the people who are listening to the show? What would you want them to know about being vulnerable and living without regret?
Uh, in order to really live a fully expressed life, you have to be a little bit vulnerable. And I think vulnerable has a bad rap. People people think of it as a negative thing and that you're going to get hurt. Well, you might be hurt a little bit, but there's a saying, no pain, no gain. And we are all built to be resilient. And when I went on a journey, especially realizing that I was shut down to some degree in my business as little as 10 years ago, it started to come to my attention that people would connect with me in person, and then somewhere along the line, there was a disconnect, and I would become uncomfortable with something. And I'm not a very good actress, so they would be able to tell. And so this was a problem that I really had to solve in my business. And I realized that I could be resilient. I could open up more. And as I started to do that intentionally, very intentionally, especially about 3 years ago, I started to see that more and more opportunities were opening up to me because I was sharing more of who I am. So that goes back to the very first thing that we said about the internet, and that when you share with people, it gives people some idea of, it gives them a way to connect with you. Whether you share where you're from, or you share, things that you like, or you share an opinion, photos, it doesn't really matter what you're sharing, but just the fact that you are sharing with them gives people a way to connect with you. And especially because my business is focused on helping coaches, speakers, mentors, and authors, that their business is built on their personality in large part, and especially with coaches, and that's my main target market. So a person has to know, like, and trust you, is the saying, as a coach, and how they get to do that is by you sharing a little bit of who you are, because the programs don't sound that much different. People connect with the person behind the program. So that's why I started to change. And, aside from the fact that it had been painful, and I started to change first in my dating life by going on doing internet dating. And I